Welcome everyone to Buddhist Center. It's Sunday, so we're talking about Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. We're so fortunate. This is a text that falls within the category of the text called the Lam Rim, which means stages of the path to where, the stages of the path to enlightenment. And the Lam Rim texts contain everything that's needed for a practitioner, a spiritual practitioner, everything is needed to do, basically, and think about in order to go from wherever one is at. And if you're where I'm at, that's in a very, full of afflictions and self-grasping ignorance that, I believe there's an antidote to. And I found smaller antidotes, antidotes to smaller afflictions that have been very helpful that Buddha has prescribed. So I have some faith in the larger antidotes. So I have this self-grasping ignorance that runs to afflictions and so forth. I have this, but I have faith in the fact that I can transform because of the small amount of transformation that's already taken place. And how is that transformation taken place? It's taken place by relying upon very specific steps, very specific meditations that were prescribed by Buddha, and then kind of arranged and put together by the Indian Pandits. And Lord Atisha then wrote this incredible text called The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment that contains all of the stages of the path to Buddhahood. He put them in an order that was easily understood. Whereas if you were trying to sort through the Nalanda Pandit works, and look at the Profound View lineage and the Extensive Deeds lineage and try to see how it relates in terms of, first you do this, second you do this, third you do this, fourth you do that, it's quite difficult. And then if you were just to look at the raw sutras and tantras Lord Buddha wrote, because they were being taught to such varieties of individuals in terms of their scopes, it's quite difficult to see exactly where everything fits and understand what's definitive and what's interpretable. So we're so fortunate that the Lam Rim tradition is a tradition that Lord Atisha not created, Buddha created it, but the tradition of kind of order of operation was put together by Lord Atisha. And then all of the sects of Tibetan Buddhism, the Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, Galupa, they all really, when we look at the stages of the path to enlightenment, all of the four classes of the four, what are they called? The four divisions of Tibetan Buddhism all have Lam Rim tradition. We find in the Nyingma tradition, Lojien Rajamba. In the Sakya tradition, we have Sakya Pandita's works. In the Kagyu tradition, of course, we have Gampopa's Jeweled Ornament for Liberation. And then in the Galupa tradition, we have Lama Tsongkhapa's works, a great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, the medium stages on treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and then the smaller abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment, the lines of experience. And then other works like The Source of All My Good, and that would fall categorically under it. And then the three principal paths, somewhat, even though we're not talking about the three persons of three capacities, the content's so similar and kind of laid out in a way that the Lam Rim really works well with it. And then the Lojong teachings within the Lam Rim and so forth. So the Lam Rim just means stages of the path to enlightenment. And it's a kind of group, it's a way that all of Lord Buddha's teachings can be put into context in terms of what to practice first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. And fortunately for us, having been trained by Khyentse Geshe Wandak, the Galupa tradition has an incredibly immense, rich amount of information related to the stages of the path, written by Panchen Lamas and the fifth Dalai Lama and the third Dalai Lama and so forth. First Dalai Lama, we have a lot of works, and then other works by great authors like Pagonka Rinpoche, etc. So we have a wealth of information related to the stages of the path to enlightenment within our tradition, passed down to us by Khyentse Geshe Wandak. And it's great that we have such a vast amount of information because we have a vast amount of problems. We have a vast amount of afflictions and tendencies, and some of them are acquired and some of them are innate. and meaning not innate, meaning they can't be taken care of, meaning that since beginningless time, we've had this thing that can be put to an end, but it's innately kind of this self-grasping ignorance has been there. It hasn't been something that we had to be taught to us in this life, which would be an acquired affliction, something that was taught. The I definitely is truly established. If we were in a tradition that taught us the Atman, this would be an acquired kind of self-grasping. But then there's this innate one that just kind of comes with us life to life, where we think that the I inherently exists, that phenomena other than the I inherently, then the person inherently exists. And then from that, we make decisions about objects that we come in contact with and pay attention to. We make decisions based on, believing that from our side, we inherently exist, and from that thing's side, it inherently exists. And there's a duality there. There's no kind of cooperation whatsoever. We don't see it. And when we look at the Madhyamaka Prasangika view, we have to figure out how to understand that it's all subjective. Everything is subjective. Even the I, this grasping at the self of person is subjective. Grasping at the, the I, everything that I'm experiencing, even though it seems like there's other than my consciousness, things that, I don't mean that the things out there are the same nature as my consciousness, meaning there's no externality, meaning that the things out there are all just projections of my consciousness that are merely being labeled in dependence upon collections that I'm coming into contact with. And then my thought is designating them as this or that, and then bringing them into existence as being this or that. And there's nothing from the object's side. There's nothing from the person's side that can be found inherently one or different from the parts. There's nothing that can be found that's separate. You can't take away this thought designation, this mere thought designation, this mere imputation. You can't take away this mere imputation in dependence on a basis and have the thing still. If you take away the labeling, that's done by the thought consciousness in dependence upon the collection, you don't have the thing. It requires someone to, in order for these things to be these things, in order for that to be a dog or to be a key in Tibetan, or be, what is it, cur, I think in Latin, it takes someone to decide that and put that collection together, and say there's this thing, this impermanent thing that has, causes and conditions, that's not autonomous, that's collection of parts that I'm merely designating as this or that, independence upon a collection. And even the parts themselves aren't inherently existent when we begin to look at and investigate what's really there. So we have this belief that there's some sort of separateness there, that there's some sort of entity there that's findable from its own side, but we're merely coming up with what it is, the concept of what it is, what we've heard about it, what we've thought about it, and we create this very solid, static picture in our mind of what something is. And that static picture that we have in our mind about our entire reality isn't tallying with reality. And we have a static picture of our entire existence because we don't meditate upon impermanence. We don't even get through the gate of understanding of impermanence when we're looking at what Buddha came to teach us. We don't even see this impermanence, this changing moment by moment thing that's happening to us. So we're so surprised and shocked when things break, when things fall apart, when they're already falling apart, and we just aren't paying attention to the falling apart. And this causes us so much distress and so much worry. And this is why the Buddha came and taught impermanence first. It said all compounded things are impermanent, just to get us to loosen up this idea about the world around us enough to be able to have an openness to be able to now say, oh, well, not only are things coarsely impermanent and subtly impermanent and moving so quickly, just moving so fast, and we're not even recognizing it, in the midst of that, even though it's all moving so quickly, even if we understood it was moving so quickly and we're able to suppress some of the emotions that come around surprise, we still wouldn't have gotten to the root of why these things are having to occur. This birth, aging, sickness, death, separating from the pleasant, meeting with the unpleasant, not getting what you want in the appropriated aggregates. We still haven't gotten to the root. It's not because things are impermanent that these things are happening. There's some connection to it. Because they're impermanent, there are results, and these things are happening because they have a cause. And we have to get to the bottom of what that cause is. And the cause of it isn't impermanence. The cause of it is the cause of cyclic existence isn't our misunderstanding of impermanence. The cause of cyclic existence is our misunderstanding related to the self of person and phenomena. We believe that there's an inherent existence here, intrinsic existence, that there's something that exists within the object by way of its own character that can be established. And that's the real root of our problem. But we feel like we can skip to such an intellectual material, but not understand the things that kind of lead up to this understanding. So it's important for us to take the full body of Buddha's work and to be able to understand all the levels of dependent origination. And this will help motivate us to move forward on the path. If we can understand the dependent origination related to cause and effect, related to the 12 links of dependent origination, then we can just be more sensible about our actions if we're looking to create happiness and we don't want to have suffering. If we can become very aware of the 12 links of dependent origination that start with ignorance, but then we understand that the karma is what's going to, our actions are what's going to, be the dictator of our future. But most of us haven't even learned enough about the Lam Rim, the stages of the path, and to really even get to that point where we have this kind of need to investigate further because we've learned the process of cyclic existence. And what is incredible is that within the Lam Rim teachings, again, the teachings that are on the stages of the path, and these teachings on the stages of the path are really, most of the framework, as I said, that Longchenpa uses, that Sakyapandita uses, that the Gampopa uses, that Tsongkhapa uses, is really using the framework of Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, and then working off the spiritual capacities, the teaching shared in common with beings of small, medium, and great capacity, showing how once first a practitioner, figures out how to, want to have a better future rebirth, reflecting on future lives, and abandoning the causes of the lower realms in the smallest category, and the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity. The Lam Rim tradition always starts with, kind of an investigation that leads up to this desire to become a Buddha. And then the two ways you can become a Buddha related to the perfection and the resultant vehicle. But we first learn about how to deal with our next life and how to not get a bad one. And these are the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity. And we find all of the teachings on, relying on the teacher, and death and, life of leisure and opportunity, and death and impermanence, and reflecting on the lower realms and in future lives, and the 10 non-virtues, and what to do if you engage in non-virtue by applying the 4 opponent powers. We find all of this, rich information right in the first section. If we're going to break the Lam Rim, the stages of the path, into these sections called small, medium, and great, that first section contains all of that information, because if we don't want to have a rebirth in the lower realms when we die, we have to be involved in noble activities, because most beings are involved in ignoble activities, according to Aryadeva. So we have to learn what that means. An ignoble activity would be among the 10 non-virtuous activities. So most beings are involved in the 10 non-virtuous activities, doing them, not stopping them. So therefore, the 10 non-virtuous activities lead to suffering, lead to the lower realms of suffering. Non-virtue leads to the lower realms. Non-virtue, afflictions, leads to the lower realms of suffering, and so forth. So we learn all about this in the small scope. And then in the medium scope, we learn basically what the Buddha came to teach at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, that, hey, not only are the lower realms of cyclic existence plagued with suffering, but also the higher realms are plagued with suffering. So in the medium scope, the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity within the Lam Rim. So it goes from this idea of wanting to, not have a bad next rebirth. And then the medium scope gets to this idea that a next rebirth is a problem too if you're in cyclic existence. So let me tell you why you're in cyclic existence and show you how to get out of cyclic existence for yourself alone. So the medium scope has the Hinayana teachings within it, the teachings for the hearers and solitary realizers. But the small and medium scope are called teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, shared in common with beings of medium capacity, because they are required as bases for the realizations and the teachings for beings of great capacity. So you see how the Lam Rim, it's called stages of the path. These stages of the path are you do this and then you do that and then you realize this and then you realize that. And it puts it in an order that we can actually practice and have a mirror to see whether or not we're having realizations. We can look at these teachings and we can see what it says in relation to the small scope and see where we need to work on ourselves. We can look at the teachings in the medium scope and see what it says and see where we are in relation to this and what we need to work on. So in the medium scope, we learn that cyclic, and this is where we are right now in the teaching, we learn that all of cyclic existence, not just the lower realms, are plagued with suffering, 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, 3 sufferings, and we get to know them so well so that then we have a foundation from which to help others. Because if we only know about the sufferings that are going on right now, we are not really able to develop a true renunciation, because a true renunciation wants to get out of cyclic existence altogether. And cyclic existence is a lot bigger than just right now, just today. We've had since beginningless time. We've been professional diers. We've died over and over and over again, and we haven't figured out how to stop that cycle. And we're going to learn more about sufferings today, so I won't get into it. But when we look at cyclic existence, it's not something that we want. And if we don't really understand why that is well enough, we won't want to definitely emerge day and night. And then we won't be able to take that desire to definitely emerge day and night that we realize in the medium scope by practicing, it says, the 3 highest higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. If we don't day and night want to get out for ourselves, we can never turn that renunciation towards others and change it into compassion, wanting them to have happiness and be free from suffering, because we won't really know it in its fullest extent. And we'll have so much bias because of this lack of empathy. So when we look at these teachings and for beings of medium capacity, where we learn about every type of suffering possible, and we learn about the 12 links of dependent origination, and we learn how we could become a horrible person in our next life. We could become the most horrible person in the world if we aren't already, right? I don't know who we're talking to right now. I don't know. So like a terrible person, we could become in our next life very, very quickly. And when we start to learn this, we start to learn about the 12 links of dependent origination. We start to learn about the horrible types of beings we've been and could become because of karma and its results, and the uncertainty of the order of the way things occur, and that mostly we've been involved in non-virtue because of this self-grasping ignorance. When we start to be able to understand this situation for ourselves, then we can turn towards others and truly empathize. And if they're in a position where they would be seemingly someone we wouldn't normally like because they're acting in horrendous ways, we can say, well, we know why. We've done the same. We're going to do it again if we don't get this right. And the quickest way to stop doing it is to cherish others. So how am I going to do this? How am I going to react? How am I going to kind of make this my future? Am I going to make this more, filth to eat future, more dung to eat as a worm future? Or am I going to change this into bliss? Am I going to change this into a future that has perfect wisdom, skillful means, love, compassion, and power? What am I going to do in this moment? And the only way we have any kind of ground to work from is if we understand this medium scope. I think it makes sense, right? How could you ever think I'm going to free all sentient beings from suffering And these sentient beings suffer in ways that we learn about in the Lam Rim and the lower realms and so forth that we couldn't even imagine if we hadn't read about it. We couldn't even think that it could get that bad. We wouldn't imagine it. So if we can, and we start to understand that we've been there and we can go there, and we start to see that, in these various lives, we were dogs, just like, my dog, and I see what my dog does most of the day, and it would be ready to kill at any moment and chase birds. And it's just living just only wants to eat, so there's not a lot of opportunity in there for them to have an intention to do virtue. So we see how it's so easy that this dog I love so much, sleeps on a pillow, probably doesn't have many more years to live. I live in reality, and then could pass away. Or, my childhood dog, let's say that. And then I run into somebody who's a teenager that is really giving me a hard time. But maybe you see what I'm saying? Like, this could be my dog that's reborn because my dog ran around and didn't do good stuff most of the time, but I pet it a lot and I loved it a lot. And now there's some like young kid giving me a hard time, and I hate them because I'm not able to see. I'm being extreme. I don't really have those kind of emotions anymore. But Lori always looks at me like, this is such bullshit. I've been practicing Buddhism for a while, but I remember when so I just try to make it really, relatable. I haven't seen emptiness. I don't have calm abiding. I don't have renunciation, but I've beat up on a lot of stuff sitting next to Rinpoche over the years. So I could see how, okay, I can definitely be annoyed, but am I able to see that could be someone I loved so much, something I loved so much? Am I able to connect with that? And how would I first be able to understand it? By understanding what I'm going to be able to go through. And then I can start to look at what you're going through. And then I can start to say, hey, that person who's screaming at me is just in the midst of a wheel of life, just in the midst of the 12 links of dependent origination. And that poor deer, right now, they're creating someone who's going to feel like me in the future, but it's going to be them feeling like me. Does that make any sense? When someone's yelling at me, I'm looking at them and it feels bad, right? And I've practiced for a while. I still know how it feels. It doesn't feel good. And when I was younger, let me tell you. Okay, let me tell you. So, but if you can start to see how that person is going to feel like you do because of their ignorance, and that you're feeling the way that you do because of your ignorance, you have a common enemy. Make that the common enemy, the ignorance, because that's the problem in the interaction. That's my 2 cents for today. So we're learning about the Lam Rim, which I said encompasses all of the stages of the path to enlightenment. It's a category. Some people were asking questions about this. So this is why you're wondering, like, why am I going over this? I think it's so important that we understand this. And I thought to myself, it'd be neat if we could look at maybe some of the other Longchenpas and Sakyapanditas and Gampopas and other Lam Rims than Lama Tsongkhapas, and that's why I brought on Thursday nights the Gampopa Lam Rim in so that we can just see how all of these things, everyone's talking about the same thing if it's authentic. There isn't some new thing to find out that's going to be a new nature of reality, or that's going to be a new way to learn to cherish others more than yourself. Everyone's speaking of the same way. Sometimes the language is a little different. Even when we look at English translations, just translations, no, people don't agree. Forget it if they were writing philosophical treatises, the language that, the scholars of today, if they were all just writing philosophical treatises, how different they would all appear in the different traditions and so forth. So we can see how, different languages were used in different centuries, and, different ways of, having more of kind of physical feeling related to the teachings, or more, there are just a lot of different ways that the teachings have been presented. But the core information, the philosophy, if it's authentic, it should go right back to Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. It should be traceable right back. You should be able to point it out and say, it's there, and it's there, and it's there, it's there. Here, Tsongkhapa said it. Here, Nagarjuna said it. Here, Buddha said it. You know, it should really be that clear. And when you start to study enough, you'll see that authentic sources are that clear, and that you can find where the Buddha said exactly what you're studying and how it relates to it, and how you would have never fished it out of the 100 volumes, all of the sutras. You would have never fished it out hadn't it been for the kindness of Lord Atisha to write the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, kind of the trailblazing Lamrim text of a tradition called Lamrim. And then all of these incredible commentators afterwards who saw, wow, this is a great way to outline the teachings. And then, even traditions that were in play at the time went kind of and off of that were before Atisha, kind of saw what Atisha did, and then the traditions later wrote commentaries with that sort of outline. And when Atisha wrote the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, he was supposed to be back in India. He kind of didn't go back. He said, I'm going to go to Tibet for a second, and didn't go back. And the Indian pandits, everybody was expecting him back. And when he sent the text, the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, back to India, to take a look at it, and in Tibet at the time, everyone was, they said, of duller scope. In India, everybody was wicked smart. They would write a text, and then all these scholars would look at the text. And if the text had errors or wasn't good, they would tie it to a dog's tail and let it run around Nalanda. So this is the kind of, critique they were making in India. So Atisha takes this text that he wrote to kind of not dummy down, but you would say that, right? The Nalanda Pandits didn't need this simple, framework. Apparently, they were doing fine writing stuff. But after Atisha wrote this so that the Tibetans could see, because there was some confusion in Tibet when Atisha came to Tibet. I don't want to give the whole, biography, but when Atisha came to Tibet, there was a bunch of confusion, misunderstanding of the teachings, not understanding how you could, Sutra and Tantra are compatible. And, there was just a lot of misunderstanding at the time about the teachings when Lord Atisha came. So he wrote a very simple way to understand how all the teachings are not contradictory, how they're all instructions to practice, how you can easily understand what the Buddha meant by looking at these teachings. And you will never abandon anything the Buddha said if you understand that the Buddha was teaching the scope and know how to put these teachings into the scope order. So Lord Atisha wrote this text, the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, the signature, the trailblazing text of the Lamrim tradition, I will argue. And so he wrote this text. And it was so helpful for Tibet, because they said, oh my, okay, now this makes sense. This is how we put these things into this kind of way and context of practicing. So he sent the text back to India, and they looked at it, and he received word back that we rejoice, that this is not only helpful in Tibet, but this is helpful in India, here in, Vikramalashila and Nalanda. Think about it, that time we have the Nalanda, and we have incredible, the Vikramalashila monastery and so forth. And just think about the scholars and the works that have come out, of these monasteries, and for them to take this text that, some even Westerners consider, the lamp, that simple lamp, to take that and see that these Indian pandits found it so helpful, and maybe saw, oh yeah, maybe this is how you do it. Shh. Yeah. Because I think there's an enormous amount of not knowing how to practice within philosophy. I think there's an enormous amount of it. I've seen it. I've been around now almost 30 years, and I've seen a lot of people who can really, really talk about this stuff, but don't know how to apply it. And when pushed on what they're talking about, don't know what they're talking about. So this has been something that I've found over the years, and I've really made note of. Because I'm not here to learn cool stuff or to make new friends. I'm here because I am done. I'm done with a life where you're going along and you find out the person you love has a brain tumor and needs brain surgery. I'm done with, like, tomorrow I could die and be a cow. I'm just really, that's why I'm here, is to try to figure out how to end that. And I really care about a lot of people in my life, and I don't want them to have any of that anymore. I don't want Lori to find out I have a brain tumor and I'm going to die, or I have something and I'm going to die in 2 weeks. I don't want the people around me to have to experience these things that we will have to inevitably experience in cyclic existence. And so my motivation goes slightly beyond me, but in order for it to go the whole way, I have to keep meditating on bodhicitta. And I know that it has spread out further than it was 25 years ago because of meditation on bodhicitta. And my outlook in reality is not the same as it was 25 years ago because of impermanence and emptiness. And that doesn't mean that I, am numb and disassociated. I'm very in all of it, but it gives me a perspective that allows me not to, break down and lose it because I'm so surprised that the nature of things is happening. I'm so surprised that a wheel rolls, I'm so surprised that the sun goes up and goes down. I'm so surprised, that a rainbow, goes away. Okay, so imagine that you bring all sentient beings. So this is my pitch. This is what we're talking about today. Sounds good. A way to end suffering forever and a way to be completely woken up, which means that if you're completely woken up, you've gotten rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience and have reached a completely blissful omniscient state where you never have to deal with any of these things again. And you can be the most reliable guide in the universe and help everyone with their pain and bring some ease. And that just sounds to me like just so wonderful. So just imagine that you're sharing this precious gift with all sentient beings, and that you gather them here to be your guest, to lead them in prayer, so that they can understand the truth of reality, so that they can get rid of their self-cherishing attitude and become Buddhas, because that's the most satisfying place for a being to be. That's the only being who's gotten rid of all faults and has all excellent qualities is a Buddha. The only being who has not only no suffering, but moves from bliss to bliss to bliss to bliss because of dependent origination, because the mind that's clear and knowing clearly knows that only. And now our mind clearly knows delusion, clearly knows it. This is the thing we have to understand. So it can clearly know something else. It clearly knows the wrong thing. It just needs to clearly know the right thing. It's illuminated and it's reflecting the wrong thing and knowing it. You just have to have it on the right thing. Bright, reflecting, and knowing. And that's how our mind can transform. Does that make sense? Because it's just not knowing the right thing. It's reflecting something. It's not screwing up. Your mind's not screwing up. It's just reflecting delusion, impurity. You just have to, the mind is in the nature of clear light. These stains that we have are adventitious. If we distill it, it reflects bliss. It reflects everything. It will know everything. It won't be held back by anything. And we can see how the mind can get bigger and bigger and bigger in our own life just by trying to expand it in our meditation. Imagine if we could remove everything that keeps it inhibited, that spacesuit that's, so cumbersome that our mind is in, that is really a gymnast, and it's stuck in a spacesuit. Imagine if our mind could just flow as freely as it wants to and was not encumbered by the afflictive obstructions, and the obstructions to omniscience are really what keeps it from flowing so freely, Imagine. So we are going to be beings who will no longer have to deal with the things that I'm talking about in the medium scope related to suffering. So let's share that. Let's bring every single sentient being in the universe here in our minds, because we will connect with every single sentient being in the universe and become their most reliable guide when we become a Buddha. If they become a Buddha before us, they'll be our most reliable guide. So recognize that every single sentient being has this Buddha nature, has a proliferating Buddha nature, has a natural Buddha nature. All of our minds are empty of inherent existence. All of our minds can mature. All of our minds have this beautiful seed of perfection within it. And we just need to grow it. And imagine that we're bringing everyone here in the universe to help them grow, to help us grow, because we know there's this interdependence that's there. We see this, we learn this in equalizing and exchanging self with others. When we think about the great kindness of all, we think about how everything that we enjoy, everything that we have in our lives is because of others. It's because of others' kindness. So how right it would be to bring everyone here who's all just trying to be happy and show them what you've learned and show them an exact way to make that happen. So just think about that for a moment, that that's what you've done. You've brought everyone here in the universe for the purpose of getting them to somehow get some sense together to look at the teachings of Lord Buddha and be able to have a sense of ease forever. Now imagine that every single sentient being in the universe is here and get into the 7-point Vairocana posture. Let's just take a moment to maybe just do a few rounds of breath, just to get our discursiveness, just to get our mind calmed down a little bit, to be able to then be receptive to inviting the entire merit field here. So 7-point Vairocana posture, and just focus on breathing in, breathing out, and the counting. Bring the breath all the way to the top in a very natural way, and exhale all the way out. And as you exhale, count 1. Inhale all the way to the top of the breath. Turn it around very gently. Exhale 2. We'll just do that for a few moments, making the breath your main only focal object, and the counting. As you exhale, feel as though the pressure in the room, all the stress in your heart is going down. You're in a safe place where you're learning about exactly what you need to learn in order to have freedom. You've brought all sentient beings here to help protect them. Rejoice in the fact that you even had this thought for a moment to care about others. Normally, we just think about caring for ourselves. Rejoice in this fact that you're caring about others. Now imagine the space in front of you. Buddha Shakyamuni appears about an arm length away, eye height about the size of your thumb. Buddha Shakyamuni is there looking into your eyes with so much love and compassion, so proud of the fact that you're engaging in the stages of the path to enlightenment. Buddha sees all sentient beings like their like his or her closest child, and has one goal for us. That's to engage in the stages of the path that will allow us to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, just like they did. So Buddha Shakyamuni is on a throne and looking into our eyes, smiling. This is a being who has the realizations that we will have. Now imagine that the enlightened beings begin to fill, all the other enlightened beings begin to fill the space in front of you. The merit field begins to be arranged. Imagining His Holiness the Dalai Lama on a throne, supported by snow lions. So firm and solid. We're so fortunate that he's in our world. Imagining Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Demo Locha Rinpoche, Khenser Lobsang Gyatso. Imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu Umzila Geshe Aga. Imagining Jeffrey Hopkins, Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin, Chowder Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Any beings that you consider holy beings, Ani Tupten Chodron, imagining them all in the space in front of you. We're so fortunate to be able to be connected to these beings, to hear their teachings, to have heard their teachings, to have our lives changed perpetually better because of these teachings. They were so kind. Khenser Geshe Wandak asked for nothing from us and just gave so much over and over and over again, was never, ever upset with having to repeat himself. One of the beings that would be considered a scholar's scholar, but was willing to teach at a kindergarten level because of his immense love and kindness. Just a true role model of what we can become if we engage in these practices. Now imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga and Vasubandhu and Dignaga and Dharmakirti and Muktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyapprabha and Gunaprabha and Lama Salimpa and Atisha, as we've just mentioned, who combined all of these lineages we're mentioning into an order we can understand called the Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment. Imagine the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Shantideva and Baba Vega and Chandrashita and Kamala Shila. And again, imagining Lama Salimpa and Atisha, because Atisha combines all of these lineages, is a holder of all of these lineages. Imagining Lord Vajradhar and Sarahama Tripa, Tilopa Naropa, Lutsawa Marpa, Jitsamila Repa, Gampopa, amazing masters of the lineage of blessings, all here in the space in front of you, all affecting us so greatly. If we allow these teachings to penetrate our mind, we're allowing these holy beings to do that, because they're the ones who have been so kind to come and elucidate the teachings by writing them and passing them down from their mouths to their students' ears. Imagining Atisha's passing the Lamrim lineage, this incredible lineage we always talk about, the stages of the path to enlightenment, passing it down to Drontompa in the three old Kadampa lineages. Imagining the holy beings of the Nyingma, Padmasambhava, Sakya, Sakya Pandita, Kaji Karmapas and Galupa, Lama Tsongkhapa and Kirtip and Joseph and Basuchuji Jetson and Benchen Sonandrapa and Jayan Jepa and Janjan Rupi Dorje and Gonjo Jimmy Wambo, Jitsumba, Purbajok, all of these holy beings, seventh Dalai Lama in the space in front of you, highest Yoga Tantra deities, performance Tantra deities, action Tantra deities, all of the 35 Buddhas, imagining all the protector deities are here in the space in front of you. When we invite them as our guests, they arrive because they're omniscient beings with love and concern. We just don't have the karma to be able to see it. Just feel for a moment that you do. Believe for a moment that you do. And imagine that just you see the entire merit field in your mind in the space in front of you. And that all sentient beings also have this epiphany that, oh my, the entire merit field is in the space in front of me. These are the holy beings that are my guides. These are the beings that I can rely upon, like Buddha Shakyamuni, the one who transformed into a reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector. To you, I make prostrations. When there's hope, when there's a solution, there's nothing to worry about. And imagine that just for a moment, we have that sense of ease because there is a solution. Just like Shantideva said, if there's something that we can do about a problem, why worry about it? There's something that we can do about it. If there's nothing that we can do about it, why worry about it? There's nothing that we can do about it. But here, we can do something about our situation, our plight, our 8, 6, and 3 types of suffering, and everyone else's 8, 6, and 3 types of suffering. What a relief. If we couldn't do anything about it, this would be what should make our minds so tight. But we can do something about it. And this should give us a little bit of ease, a little bit of confidence. With this in mind, with all beings that are in the universe here, sentient beings and all the enlightened beings who remove the afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, now we'll recite the Heart Sutra, the definitive teaching on the nature of reality that the Buddha taught the second turning of the wheel of Dharma in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, where he explained that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence explicitly, and then implicitly taught about the 5 paths which lead to complete Buddhahood. Let me share screen here. So now we'll recite the Heart Sutra, and Lori, I'd like to ask you to do so if you can.
Sure. I'm not sure if the audio is going to work. Can you just mute your audio and then I'll unmute mine so it doesn't compete?
Yes.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
It's going to echo. We're all good. I'll just. Those were all sentient beings.
Okay.
We're good? The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Hold on one second.
Okay.
The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita addressed in this way? Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as true, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Te atong gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Gala jube ne chodan ba ne ngushe de che nga yi de de jen ju ba ba la ma yi bu shin zi ni zong gan zhe sa la sha tse lo aga samara de shan da ra samara be aga samara je la ra samara. Aga samara jasandara samara ya bedi ada ongati kati paragati parasangati buddhizo ababa koncho sunji kai yedim bedo jishe lobodo jime bodo jishe wado jitagi baji medo beji tanji sharing gorye so ha gerin donja jeju shi wada medo nebe jenda de wada dumba joji monzon zonjoji taji de janden da de le jo. Outer mandala offering is request for teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Okay, so we were talking about the medium scope section of Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. Better said as the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity, because we're all interested in the real deal. We're interested in becoming Buddhas. So we're saying these are in common because we want to become Buddhas and we want to do all the things that are necessary along the way to become Buddhas. And the things that are necessary along the way are the teaching shared in common with beings of small and the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. So when we look at these teachings, we should think in common. This is in common. I'm doing this. Why is this in common? I'm doing this to become a Buddha, even though I'm studying something that would appear to be for an individual liberation vehicle practitioner. I'm studying this so that I can become a Buddha. So we're looking at all of the things that we're doing with the Mahayana motivation, with the motivation of becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And of course, we don't really become a Mahayanist until we're a Bodhisattva, which means that we've generated bodhicitta, which I haven't done. But I can see how over the course of time, if you continue to meditate upon the things that bring about renunciation, and then you continue after that, to meditate upon the things that bring about bodhicitta, and the two are very, very linked. When you study bodhicitta, you see these two things being very, very linked. And the more and more you do it, the more and more likely you are to be able to have these kinds of realizations that will actually make you into a perfect being, which is what a Buddha is. It's a being who has perfect wisdom, love, compassion, skillful means, power, all of these, perfect qualities. And this loving concern that was kind of ingrained, these paths, these train tracks in the Buddha's mind have been set by the Bodhisattva path that just spontaneously makes him or her help. And it's this love and concern that was built up on the Bodhisattva path. And at times like 15 minutes ago, like where we were in a contrived way, pretending to be these bodhisattvas, pretending to be able to have the ability to reach everybody and help teach them the truth of suchness and know exactly what they're going to need to hear. May this teaching be understood and heard in the language of all sentient beings and be able to be understood at their own individual level. And that's the prayer that we do, I didn't do today, but prayer we usually do related to bringing all the sentient beings here is that may I be able to, not only bring them all here, but be able to benefit them in a way that they'll understand. And this is something that we'll be able to do when we're bodhisattvas. But the only way we'll be able to do it then is by doing it in a contrived way now, by making our minds fertile, by making our minds have a basis from which to actually think this way all the time, 24/7, about everyone that we come in contact with. And that's a pretty broad, that's a big leap, I think, from a mind that just day and night cherishes itself to this broadened mind that looks after all others. So when we're looking at the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, we should really be thinking that, wow, if I get this right, I can become a Buddha. If I get this right, I'll know how to help others. If I understand how to help myself, if I understand all the potential sufferings that I can have, then I'm really going to become skilled and adept at helping others. If I can calm my mind down enough to be able to see situations for what they are as they're happening, I'm going to really be able to be of value in this society as opposed to a reactor. I'll be able to react intelligently instead of reacting out of emotion. And when I say emotion, I don't mean a good one. I'm like love and compassion for all sentient beings. I mean an emotion that is like fear, anger, attachment, jealousy, covetousness, just keep naming, pride, we think that we have not so many problems and afflictions. And then, let somebody say something philosophically erroneous to me and watch, my pride that doesn't even like deserve it. Like I haven't studied enough, to like really be like so sure. I don't have a La Rampa Geshe degree, but I'm so quick to be like, oh, dear, when I hear something that, but it's just natural, it just naturally happens. And I blow that stuff off because I didn't, scream at anyone today. And we've all got our own little mix we got to work on. And, and the mix we have to work on changes. If we've worked, we'll start to see, wow, man, I'm really not as angry a person. I'm not really an angry person at all anymore. Man, I'm really not an angry person at all anymore. You see how I just, I was doing good. And as Geshe Dorje Damju says, I was riding a horse and just jumped on a donkey. Wow. Yeah. I'm really not angry like I used to be. I'm really becoming something else. Hey, everybody, you want to gather around? Let me tell you about how to not be angry, because I have overcome this. We have to be very careful because we can switch over to a different affliction and have it just as intense sometimes. And because it's not as unacceptable, there aren't as many kind of societal consequences or relational consequences. We can kind of keep it inside, or, it doesn't really impact us as much. It can be just as bad because we can harm when we're doing this and like, oh dear, that's making the person's mind disturbed. We're hurting someone right in front of us. And that's kind of the name of the game in consequence school, Galupa debate logic. I get it. But this isn't the thing I'm talking about at this point. This is the part where I'm saying, wow, I'm smarter. Not, oh, let me try to help this person understand how to get to the correct understanding. The first instinct, even though I'm not angry all the time, is, man, that was dumb. I can catch my mind doing this sort of thing. Not all of the time. I'm exaggerating these things just to try to see if you can relate, because these things happen in my mind, or have happened in my mind. And I think that this is it's pretty universal. And it's not like some specialty. We have some like special sauces we like more than others. Not everybody wants to dip their fries in mustard. Some people want to dip their fries in ketchup. Some people don't like ketchup or any sauce on their French fries. We all have our own individual things, but we all can kind of agree on the French fry, at least, or that there's a problem, if you get what I'm saying. So these teachings that we're learning, all of the teachings, right from relying on a teacher to completion stage, highest yoga tantra, we should have in our mind, we're motivated to become Buddhists, and this is why we're doing it. So we're looking at the sufferings. What time is it?
11:41.
11:41. Wow, I have actually more than 3 minutes. That's fantastic. So we're talking about the 6 types of suffering. So we already talked about the 8. I'm not going to run you through those again. And we're going to be on page of the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment. Anybody who's new or watching, 3 volumes. If I had to run out of the house with 1 book, I would take these 3 because it's 1 book. I've told this joke before, but I get to bring 3. If I can run out of the house and the house is burning, I'm going to bring these 3 volumes, 1, 2, 3, with a disclaimer on the way out. It's 1 book. If there's someone checking at the door, I hope they know who Lama Tsongkhapa is. If they're checking me at the door with my books as I'm running out in this, imagined scenario that will never happen, where my house is on fire and there's someone outside checking to see what I've taken out. It's good to spend time in our minds with these kinds of scenarios. You can tell I've thought a lot about it. So we're on page 285 in this book, Lama Tsongkhapa's Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, that we learned is a commentary on Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. And also, it says the umbrella over the whole thing is Abhisama Alamkara by Lord Maitreya. But really, if you ask, 1,000 people who know about the Lam Rim, what's the root text? They're going to say Shanchulandan, the lamp for the path to enlightenment. But Tsongkhapa in the very, very beginning, if we remember, and I think it's important to go back and not forget and remember, it says these instructions in general are those of the ornament for clear knowledge. Maitreya's Abhisama Alamkara, composed by Maitreya. But in particular, the text for this work is Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. So in particular, that's what we're talking about. So I hope that helps anybody who is wondering and trying to clarify some of this stuff. So we're on the 6 types of suffering, and we learned I'm not going to go into them as much as I love to, because I think it's so important to be able to relate to others. But the fault of uncertainty, the fault of insatiability, the fault of having to cast these bodies off over and over again, the fault of repeated rebirth. And now we're on the section of the fault of repeatedly descending from the high to the low. And this means that within cyclic existence, we are not just going to stay kind of at one level. We have this feeling of permanence, even about rebirth. It's so strange that I think like, oh, well, I'm just going to be like me again. And like, I'll go do some other stuff. And it's not, I'm going to feel like it's me, but it's not going to feel like Jeff. We have to understand that the Jeff ejects, the Jeff is left, a mass, and then there's a consciousness ejected, subtle, that then will be embodied or not, depending, we're not going to get into this right now. And then I'm going to believe I'm whoever or whatever, and there won't be memory of Jeff whatsoever. Usually, right? I won't remember anything about this. I'll just be believing I'm someone else in a new life doing whatever it is. And most of the time it says it'll be in the lower realms. But there's this problem in cyclic existence. We have to point them all out. We have to say that, hey, you're shooting for the higher realms of cyclic existence in the teaching shared. This is why this is here, by the way. Teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity teach you to reflect on your future life and reflect on the downfalls of the lower realms. So then you want a higher realm rebirth. Well, here it says, well, I'm sorry, you don't just get to get a higher realm rebirth. Whammy! Like, remember what we told? Yeah, just keep working towards, I'm just going to small scope. I want to work towards a higher realm rebirth. If you're in cyclic existence, that's going to be tough to hold on to. That's going to be just to stay up there. That's not really reality at all. You won't get to just, the worst it's going to get isn't like this. It's going to get worse. It could get better for a second even, but it will get worse too. And it could be in this form and even worse forms of torture. And look around the world, the horrifying things that are going on that a human can experience. And we'll just imagine when you're thinking of these horrifying experiences, is that's you. And then you can empathize a little more. You're not like on some freedom train that won't have that happen when you, and you've had that happen. So this is the problem with cyclic existence. It says in the Nagarjuna's friendly letter, having become Indra, the king of the gods, worthy of the world's honor, you'll still fall again, once again to earth because of the force of past karma. So we have this karmic seeds that we planted, and they're just waiting to pop into some sort of experience. And we have every possible, all these sufferings we read about in the Lam Rim, we have seeds for all of them. That's why we're reading about them. It's not to tell a fairy tale. It's because we have a bomb inside of us. We have a seed inside of us that's ready to grow into all this terrible stuff we read about. And so does everyone else. And this is how this helps us develop compassion and love for beings. Everyone else has the same seed of all this bad stuff that can go on and good stuff. Everyone has the seed in them. And then when we look at what we label as good stuff, we see that it's the suffering of change. It's just the bait that's causing this thing to happen over and over and over again, because we don't think there's a problem, because we can find some bait to keep us in the prison. So it says, even having become a universal monarch, you'll once again become a slave for others in cyclic existence. So it shows you want to go from the highest. You're the king of the gods. Now you're a slave. And this is just because the king of the gods is the king of the gods because he or she didn't die and isn't a slave. And the slave's a slave because he or she didn't die. And who knows what's next? I think you get the point, though. This is the problem. We're going from the high realm to the low realm. There's no certainty. We're learning of this uncertainty. We're shucking these bodies off. The bodies we want to stay in, we can't stay in. Unfortunately, they don't last long. The bodies we don't want to stay in, learn about suffering, learn about karma. They last a long time. So we want to get out of them. We don't get to keep the things we want, we fall. And the things we fall into, we have to keep longer than we want. So there's just this suffering of uncertainty that we've got to get right. It says, though you've experienced long pleasures of caressing breasts and waist of divine women and men, this is being written, obviously, to, speaking to men. But obviously, though you've had, you can think in any ways that you need to. You've had in these realms, these pleasures and beautiful nectars and maidens or men or, whatever. I don't know. Chippendales times 10 men and hunks and, really beautiful women. You've had all of this, because we can relate as humans. We're really attached to flesh. So that's why the books go to flesh a lot. Books go to flesh. Buddha said there was another attachment worse than, desire for sex that he doesn't know if we could become enlightened. Like if there was another one that was as strong as that one, the Buddha made a comment like this. I don't know if it would be possible. So this is why it's like tapping in, you've had these things that you long for, the flesh you long for, you've had them, and then you've not had them. And this will continue to happen if you don't, it says, so you were doing this, and then you will once again encounter the unbearable sensations of cutting, grinding, and flesh-tearing hells. Having dwelled long on the peak of Mount Meru, enjoying the pleasant touch of the ground, soft on your feet, imagine undergoing the unbearable pain of walking once over hot coals and rotting corpses in hell. So we think this is a fairy tale, and this sounds dumb, and this sounds like, oh, you're just fire and brimstoning me. I heard this before when I was in my other religious tradition. But just, you think there's not forms of suffering greater than the ones you know about? You think this is everything you see around you is all there is? Be open to the idea that it's not, and be open to the idea that it could get really, really bad. Look at the animal realm. A lot of it's really, really bad. The fear and stress that animals are under. So we can see the animals going through that. We're so like arrogant. We don't think there's something worse than that. Like we don't think about the animals because we don't think we can be born as an animal. So we just think about us. But then think about it. If we could be born as an animal, we see these incredible amounts of suffering animals go through. You don't think there's something worse than that? That's all. Keep an open mind, because that makes you want to do something about your situation and others' situation. If you look at the person next to you that you love and you see this is all potential, you've got to do something about this. And this is how it makes it real. Having frolicked in beautiful groves and joined the embraces of others, you will arrive once again in the forest of hell, where the leaves are swords and slices off ears, nose, hands, legs. And people are tortured. These kinds of things happen in the world right now. You don't have to go to hell to hear about things like this. People mutilated, tortured. Though you have entered the great gently flowing river with beautiful goddesses and golden lotuses, you will plunge once more into hell, into scalding water, the unbearable waters of the impassable river. Oh, I could never imagine that. And I drop a lobster into a pot of boiling water. I could never imagine a being who's like boiling in water, alive. Having gained the great pleasures of a deity in the realm of desire, or the detached happiness of Brahma, you will once again become fuel for fire in the unrelenting hell, suffering pain without respite. Having been a deity of the sun or the moon, illuminating the world with the light of your body, you will once again return to dense black darkness where you can't even see your outstretched hand. So think about these potentials. And then it goes on to point out all of the different, sufferings that happen that have been pointed out already, in the lower realms, in the 8 hot hells, the 8 cold hells, the surrounding hells, the hungry ghost realm, all the sufferings that animals have, and so forth. It says that you've experienced all these all the way up to the highest, the heaven of the 33, and so forth. You've been as bright as the sun and the moon, and been so, and been considered worthy of praise to the world, and then you will eventually, having been in that state, have to be just the opposite, basically. And then the basis of discipline says the end of accumulated things is depletion. The end of things that are high is fall. The end of meeting is separation. The end of life is death. And these are called the 4. I'm not in the right commentary. I'm like, where's the thing that I wanted to say? It's in the other book. It's in Pabunka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. So the point that I wanted to make. Okay, so there are verses from the Vinaya that I just read. I was just reading so what I was just reading was Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. The root text for Pabunka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. So Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand by Pabunka Rinpoche is a commentary on Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. The great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment is a commentary on Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. So keeping it all clean, keeping the books clean. So this verse from the Vinaya is called the 4 ends of composed things. There's 4 lines here. And it says, all accumulations are lost in the end. And then so Pabunka says, so this is the first of the 4 ends of composed things, that all accumulations are lost in the end. And then Pabunka says, all accumulated wealth eventually is lost. So you get all the money in the world, you don't bring it with you to your next life. And it says anything that rises eventually falls. This is the second of the 4 ends. Anything that rises to a high position ends up falling again. Everything that comes together eventually undergoes separation. Even everything that is born ultimately must die. The conditions are described as the four ends of composed things. This instruction teaches that every kind of well-being we achieve in samsara always ends up being lost. So it's so important that everything that we can gather in samsara ends up being lost. Such a profound thing. Everything ends up being lost. We think about it. Is it true or not? We have to meditate. Is everything in samsara? What's this line say? Every kind of well-being we achieve in samsara always ends up getting lost. So this is our meditation for the week. Is every kind of well-being we achieve in samsara always lost? Because if that's the case, that's really a distasteful place to be. And then it says, Geshe Tsompala said, it is troubling to consider the many ups and downs we experience in samsara. It says, what's more, no one is able to keep all things he or she worked long and hard to acquire, such as a house and other property. One way or another, we eventually lose them. They might be taken away by an enemy, or the owner himself might simply die. We live in the house, the person who we bought our house from, the Shemanskys, he's dead. You know, we get his mail. You know, so we say, this is my house. He said it was his house. He lived in this house just like us and believed this was his house just like we do. We believe we possess these things for real. Now we think it's our house. We just haven't died yet or had it taken away from us because we can't afford it. You know, like these are things that happen in samsara. I'm not saying we're about to have our house taken away. Don't anybody think that's what I'm implying. But anyway, one way or another, we eventually lose them. They might be taken away by an enemy, or the owner might simply die. Even you and I, who have gathered here as gurus and students, and this is Pabunka Rinpoche. Imagine you're listening to Pabunka Rinpoche in this huge crowd in Tibet in the 1920s. And Pabunka Rinpoche is saying, he's pointing out to the crowd, lay people, monks and nuns, he's saying that even you and I, who've gathered here as guru and students, will definitely have to go our separate ways after a few years or so. How true. We just experienced March 6, 2022. Pabunka Rinpoche is not in our world either. Neither is Trijung, who wrote all this down, who was our teacher's teacher, who's no longer in this world either. The Lam Rim, these teachings that Lord Buddha gave, they're just the truth. Imagine Pabunka Rinpoche is sitting there just looking at 20,000 people and saying that, you know, he had so many students, you know, who considered him his guru, their guru, considered him their guru. And he's saying to them, we don't have many years left. He was older. We don't have many years. We're going to separate. And it says, as the Supreme Conqueror Kelsang Gyatso wrote, this is the 7th Dalai Lama, by the way, Gyalwa Kelsang Gyatso, even a person of high birth before long can become a servant who must endure being kicked. So just think about that. The king will be born and is just kicked like a dog. The letter to a friend says, having been chakra, worthy of the world's veneration, you fall back to earth by the force of karma, and having been a wheel-wielding universal monarch, you return as the lowest of servants in samsara's round. And then oh, this is really good. Those who achieve such exalted positions as becoming gods of Brahma or chakra eventually fall. So these are like, imagine you're in a high king of the gods or super god. I don't know. Even the more modest positions we can achieve in this human realm have no value. As J. Gongtanwa wrote, if you climb too far, going ever higher in the dead tree of position and fame, you'll get hurt when a weak branch breaks. So you're better off staying near the trunk. this kind of misfortune doesn't only happen from one life to the next. Everything in our current life is uncertain as well. For instance, a king sometimes ends up being imprisoned. So even in this life, you can fall from the high to the low, and we know this. We know in our own lives, we've had things and don't have things, or maybe you do, maybe you don't. But, even in this lifetime, you can see, going from the high to the low, positions, then you lose the position, or you have to make your own. You only know your story, but make sure that your story is touching the text here. Your story is somehow being explained to you by Tsongkhapa and by Pabunka and by the Nalanda Pandits, by Shakyamuni Buddha. Your story. Figure out how to make your story explained. Like, why this? Why that? What is your story? Why am I attached to this? Why do I like this more than why? Let the Buddha, let these pandits explain to you, be your owner's manual. Tell you your story. Use your story, not my stories. I'm just trying to show you how stories make you practice, how your own stories are your practice. Because that's all we have. It's all we have is our experiences, who we think we are right now, what we think is good, what we think is bad. And we start from there. And that's our only place we can start from. And then it says, then Kyabche Rinpoche concluded this section by describing events that took place during the time of Desi Singye Gyatso. Who's this? I don't know. Was the title of the chief political administrator in Tibetan government, a position established during the time of the fifth Dalai Lama. It was abolished some history. So he was a Tibetan government person. The chief minister established many new policies in the Tibetan government and was a person of very great wealth, authority, and knowledge. In the end, however, he was beheaded after a long-standing dispute with La Sang Kang. His severed head was left for many days at Tree Bridge in Tu because no one had the courage to claim it. Sanjay Jatsu's family, including his mother and other relatives, were also forced into exile and left destitute. So we see Pabonka Rinpoche didn't know what was coming, unfortunately. Tibet hadn't been invaded. He didn't realize that his own country, where he lived and was giving this teaching in the land of the deities, where Avalokiteshvara was born, he didn't realize that all of these terrible things were going to be going on, all of these tortures and all of these beheadings and all of these were going to be happening to monks and nuns. So crazy. Think about this life. We think about the fact that you could be living such a holy life and then bombs start dropping on Lhasa. 1 million people are killed who were minding their own business, who were living a life of peace. Many, people are people, but right, we don't want to over mystify what Tibet was either. There were problems there too. We don't want to try to pretend it was Shambhala. It wasn't. But really, people who are trying to do the best they could, and then suddenly it's just changing so fast. It's so difficult. So this is what we think about the descending from high to low. Usually it's talking about positions within the realms, but think about positions within even your life. So I just saw a question come up. Is love forever? Well, that's difficult because if you have, if you have love, if it's pure love, if you really have planted a seed in your mind of caring for someone, wanting them to have happiness and the causes of happiness, does that leave the seed in your mind? I'm going way out of the box with the answer because I don't want to give you well, when you die, the person that you loved, you die and then you become someone else and you're not going to still love that person because you're not going to remember that person. You're 99.9% chance you're not going to remember that person. And then the person that you're going to love is going to be a different continuum person if you do have someone to love. So that's a tricky thing. Is love forever? But So that's the simple answer. That'd be the simplest way for me to say it. No, it's not in the case of our normal everyday life, because usually it's attachment. The love that we're thinking about is love for a specific person, and that specific person isn't going to exist forever. That specific person, Karen, Jeff, Terry, Lori, that specific person isn't going to last forever. So if you're saying, is Jeff's love for the specific person, Lori, going to last forever? I don't know how that's philosophically tenable. But
You will.
if we're but if we're saying, is the love that I'm cultivating in my practice, can it last forever? Well, Buddha will always have love. And the way you cause that is to meditate on love. But what love is not attachment. So when I say, can love last forever? Yes, it can. But it's the love that comes about through meditating on equanimity, recognizing all beings have been our mother, brother, sister, have taken care of us and been kind to us, and wanting to repay their kindness and being so attracted to them. Because of this meditation that we've done, we want them to have happiness. That kind of mental imprint, that kind of love, wanting them to have happiness, and then not being able to bear that they have suffering, in a non-biased and in a non-attached way, it definitely leaves imprints. And of course, any kind of love that we have, even if there's attachment in there, there's a consideration of someone else that's putting them a little more further ahead of your needs than you'd like at times. So I would say it's leaving imprints that can be sustained to some degree. So then when you see emptiness, those contaminated, virtues that were embedded within the afflictions, when you're attached, there's a little bit of virtue in there of love where you're putting a little bit of their needs before your own. So that if you see emptiness, I'm doing this real time, folks. So if you see emptiness, then that little bit of contaminated virtue that was there when you were saying, I want you to have happiness and the cause of happiness, that little bit of lifting the veil of the self-cherishing attitude, whatever that virtue that's there, that will last forever, kind of. Because the Buddha just perpetually has uncontaminated virtue. And it's not some like the Buddha got all the virtue that day that he or she became enlightened. It's the virtue that's been compiled since beginningless time that has to be uncontaminated. So I don't know. The final, most subtle answer is love forever. My final answer is Jeff's love for, Lori forever? Well, Jeff's not forever. Lori's not forever. So how can that's just a concept. It's a concept in my mind, a mere imputation and dependence upon a basis of designation. So how could this mere imputation, you see what I'm saying? It's a concept. Jeff's a concept. But love is a concept, but it's also an emotional state that we can kind of leave seeds in our mind, that will ripen into caring. And the only way we could care is if we cared before, because we know that results are concordant with their causes. So yeah, I mean, kind of love lasts forever. Maybe love lasts forever. But I think it would be a great debate to have. But you'd need real specificity. I would ask the person, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? And then you can, does love last forever? What does that mean to you? What would love lasting forever mean to you? And maybe it does. If it means, the complicated dance I just did to get to it being able to say, yeah, it lasts forever once it's uncontaminated by seeing emptiness, the little bit that you've had, that wasn't sullied by attachment. It's got to be in there somewhere. But that's a great question. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. Very key to that question, right? Spiritual practitioner, you'd think love is forever. That's spiritual. But if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. And the people we say, I love you to, are this life. But you can love them and not be attached. Tricky though, huh? Tricky, tricky, tricky. Yeah. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. And prayer for the spread and the flourishing of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. Somewhere. That was close. Dropping Dharma on the floor. It's like, I didn't though. It's good. Prayer for the flourishing of Tsongkhapa's teachings. Though he's the father, producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's Dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Indraketa, he made his vow, the conqueror and his offspring praised his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage, who gave him a conch and prophesied, through this truth, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. His pure view, free of eternity or destruction, his pure meditation, cleansed of dark, fading, and fog, his pure conduct, practiced according to the conqueror's orders, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Learned, since he extensively sought out learning, reverend, rightly applying it to himself, good, dedicating all for beings in the doctrine, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scriptures, definitive and interpretive, were without contradiction, advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Listening to the teaching explanations of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practicing of the three highest higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calmed and subdued by the hearer's conduct, inwardly trusting in the two stages practice, he allied without clash the good paths of Sutra and Tantra. May the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. Combining voidness explained as the causal vehicle with great bliss achieved by method, the effect vehicle, heart essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors, like the main guardians of the three beings path, the quick-acting Lord, Vaishravana, Karmayana, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of glorious gurus' lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, and by the increase of the power of its patrons, may the conqueror Lozang's teachings flourish. And of course, as a disclaimer, the consciousness is impermanent. So we the thought of love is a consciousness, that may you have happiness in the cause of happiness. I want you to be happy. This is an impermanent. Even though you could always think about it, that doesn't mean it's not impermanent. It's moving. It's still. So we have to define permanent and impermanent when we talk about things like this too. I used it in the way that I knew you were meant. But if we get technical, even, the Buddha's omniscience is impermanent. It never stops being omniscient, but it's impermanent because there's, momentary change that's taking place, temporal moments. The Buddha isn't, the Buddha tomorrow isn't the Buddha yesterday. You know what I mean? There's temporal moments of the Buddha's omniscience that are going on, just like temporal moments moving forward. So, yeah. And so, yes. So when we have philosophical discussions, we have to be careful, what we say and what the implications are of what we say. But that's a way to think about it in terms of, leaving seeds in your mind that will ripen into you always loving. Think about it that way. But that would be impermanent though still. That state of love would be impermanent, but that doesn't mean it ends. It just means there's temporal moments that are changing, just like our consciousness right now. Every snap of the finger, there's so many moments that have already occurred in a period of time. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lozandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. through the power of these prayers, through the power of this practice, through the truth that's been expressed today, through the power of the truth of anything that I've said when I translated for Rinpoche or done in my practice, may Geshe Dadu Namgyal be found safely. May his mind be at peace. Those of you who are following this, Geshe La has gone missing and has been missing now. I don't know how many days. It's over a week. So it's almost 2 weeks now, isn't it? Yeah, it's just coming up on 2 weeks. So there's been some hope, some sighting, but please, do Tara practice and think about him, because he's an incredible scholar, great practitioner, so kind, and was at the Shravasti Abbey giving teachings, and also, though, before that was giving teachings in Losaling and in Emory University, and has just did such incredible work for the sake of sentient beings, and may he be found safely. And if anybody has any ideas or has seen a monk in the Washington area, Idaho area, kind of that border area, Spokane, anyone who's listening, please call the authorities if you see a monk walking around, about 5'2", 64 years old. He was left in robes and a winter hat and a jacket. So, and somebody said they saw someone who fits the description a couple days ago, within 40 miles of the nunnery. So who knows? We don't have any answers. We don't know what's going on, but please keep him in your prayers. And also please keep Jeffrey Hopkins again, and then Jambal Dropla in your prayers as well, who's, gone through a series of surgeries and is recovering. It's like crazy. I can't even believe it. When you think of like the way you've like predict things are going down, I was not in a mindset at all that he was going to be okay. And I think it also, I put up walls and prepared after Rinpoche passing and Geshe Gompo. I'm ready at all times for things to kind of go the wrong way. But wow, amazing. Just so amazing that he's doing better. And really, Genla said, because of the prayers, he feels like it's really helped. Feels like the medicine Buddha pujas we've done, he feels like it's really, really helped. And he's been following all of it. We've been telling him everything that's been going on. And really, so keep him in your prayers. And of course, Lori, who we know has a brain tumor, and we don't think it's cancer, but we don't know. And it has to be removed because it's growing. So we're doing that in a month. And please keep her in your prayers. Palden Lamo and Tara is what I ask. Keep it to that, please. If it's for Lori, Palden Lamo and Tara. I know you have your own individual practices. This is what I'm requesting, Palden Lamo and Tara exclusively, because of our deep connection with Palden Lamo and Tara with Rinpoche. And yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified by the mantra of Vajrasattva. Imagining Vajrasattva in the space in front of you, inseparable from your root Lama. Imagining light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings and purifying your body, speech, and mind. Imagining that the light rays and nectars are showering down, transforming into white ohms, red ahs, and blue ohms. And again, purifying yours and all sentient beings, body, speech, and mind, respectively. Kind of in that order. Your crown, you imagine a white ohm. At your throat, a red ah dissolves. And at your heart, a blue hum dissolves. And you're imagining that your body, speech, and mind, and all sentient beings' body, speech, and mind are being purified. Om Benzosada Samaya Manubalaya Benzosada Zenovaji Jadida Me Baba Zodagaya Me Baba Zubagaya Me Baba Nurada Me Baba Zavaziri Me Braja Zavagama Suji Megi Damji Anguru Home. Ha ha ha, Bhagavan Zava Data Gata Benzama Me Moga Benza Baba Mahasamaya Zapa Ahom Be. Any obstacles you may have to meeting with the Dharma or to long life, may they be removed with the power of this mantra of Drapu Sunjit. Om Vajrapani Haya Griva Garuda Om Ve. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samanta Bhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deed. Prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. prayer of supplication to Nangyal Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. Oh, thank you. That's easier than me shuffling my papers. You want we can't.
Just hit mute on
Here.
Hit mute on your, no, hit mute on there. Hit the mute button.
No, do this.
Please hit the mute button.
It won't work.
It will work.
No. Anyway, I'll just read it.
All right.
I was trying to be fancy. I think it'll reach. Just do it. I'm telling you, just trust me. Trust me. Just grab this. It's auspicious.
I'm going to.
Okay.
Okay. Am I off mute?
You're fine.
It's off mute. Oh, okay. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om Ah Hum. The rarity of having one wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed a complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like a teacher who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us to never be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped, all composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transformed to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchess that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. Madness of a heart would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world to take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are.
Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate all of you. I really hope that you're benefiting from these teachings and kind of learning ways to finagle them in your lives and work with them in your lives to try to create a more virtuous mind on a daily basis so that you can be happy forever. That's the only thing we're trying to do, is end suffering and make it so we could be happy forever. And the Buddha has taught us how to do it. And luckily, Khyentse Geshe Wandak came and gave me some tips. So I'm giving you some tips. Thank you. Have a great day. We'll see you when we see you.